My parents picked my brother's birthday over the funeral of my wife and 2 children. When I shared the tragic news, my father calmly said, "Today is your brother's birthday. We can't come." 6 months later, one headline about me sent my entire family into panic when they found out I had. This isn't just a story about losing everything, it's about what you choose to do when the world shatters around you. It's about a moment of unbearable tragedy that set me on a path not of destruction, but of rebuilding something far more meaningful than I could have ever imagined. My name is Alex Whitmore, and for most of my life, I was just a name, a legacy. You see, the Whitmore family wasn't just wealthy, we were an empire. My father, Charles Whitmore, was the chairman and CEO of Whitmore Retail Group, a high-end supermarket chain where everything, from the imported cheese to the staff's meticulously trained smiles, screamed luxury. We lived in a lavish mansion in Greenwich, Connecticut, a place where the air itself seemed to smell of money and expectation. My father, with eyes sharp as a razor, would constantly remind me, "Alex, you are the future of Whitmore retail. Don't let me down." I'd nod, a 10-year-old boy burdened by a dynasty I didn't truly understand, suffocating under the weight of it all. My mother, Monica, was always draped in silk, but her eyes held a distant sadness. My younger brother, Nathaniel, was a carbon copy of my father, always knowing how to play the game. And me? I was the one who asked too many questions, who felt out of place. Then I met Elena. She was the light that cut through my gilded cage, but also the spark that ignited every tragedy that followed. We met at Stanford, a crisp autumn afternoon. I was buried in an economics textbook, and she walked in, bringing with her the scent of fresh coffee and a fresh perspective. Elena was different. Simple sweater, hair in a ponytail, brown eyes that sparkled with untold stories. When our hands brushed as I picked up a dropped pen, it felt like an electric current. She was Elena Lancaster, and she changed everything. She talked about her father, Robert Lancaster, who founded Lancaster Market, a budget supermarket chain serving working-class communities. "My dad always says," she laughed, "everyone deserves to eat well, not just the wealthy." A twinge of unease shot through me. Lancaster Market. That name was poison in my father's world. He called them those cheap supermarkets, tarnishing the industry, selling to people who didn't know quality. He couldn't see the real difference Robert Lancaster was making, providing quality food to everyone, even offering free meals for children. The Whitmores and Lancasters were locked in a full-blown war, suing each other over ads, fighting for real estate. Nathaniel joked about it, the war of the vegetable vendors, but to me, it felt like a tragic play fueled by ego. Elena and I fell in love anyway. Our dates weren't at fancy restaurants, they were in small diners, laughing over burgers, as she scribbled ideas for improving food supply chains in her notebook. She saw the world through the lens of simple values, not wealth. But I knew our love was a ticking time bomb. My father would never accept her. The explosion happened one winter evening when I brought Elena home. The mansion gleamed, the dining table a royal banquet. My mother smiled stiffly. Nathaniel smirked. My father looked at Elena as if she were an intruder. "Lancaster," he spat, his voice cold as ice. "Robert Lancaster's daughter. The one ruining the retail industry." Elena gripped my hand, but she didn't back down. "My father built Lancaster Market to help people, Mr. Whitmore." My father gave a mocking laugh. "Help people? You're tarnishing this family's name, Alex. You're disappointing me." The argument escalated. My father pointed at me. "If you choose this girl, you're no longer my son." Nathaniel sat silently, a curl at the corner of his mouth. My mother just stared at her napkin. I walked Elena to her car, apologizing. But she just hugged me. "I don't need your family to accept me, Alex. I just need you." The weeks that followed were a blur. My father summoned me to his Manhattan office. "Nathaniel will inherit the company," he said, his eyes like ice. "You're no longer in the plan." My world crumbled. "Because of Elena." I croaked. "Because you've betrayed this family. You chose the daughter of our enemy, a girl unworthy of the Whitmore name. From now on, you're on your own." I left, reeling. But calling Elena, hearing her warm voice, I knew I'd made the right choice. She was my home. That's when I visited the Lancasters in Portland. Robert welcomed me like an old friend. "Alex," he said, placing a hand on my shoulder, "you love my daughter, and that's enough. I don't care who your father is." For the first time, I felt truly accepted. But I knew the war wasn't just business anymore. It was personal. And I was on the dividing line. 3 years passed since that evening, since my father disowned me, since Nathaniel became the heir, since I chose love over legacy. Every time I looked in the mirror, I still saw my father's cold, piercing gaze. I didn't join Lancaster Market, not at first. I needed to stand on my own. So I joined Fresh Route, a logistics startup in Seattle, figuring out how to get fresh food from farms to consumers in 24 hours, at the lowest cost. It was grueling, but I loved building something meaningful, working with people who didn't care whose son I was. Elena and I married in a small Portland church. No lavish reception, no Whitmores. Robert walked Elena down the aisle, his eyes shining. "You're my son now, Alex," he whispered, hugging me. "Take care of her." My mother sent a guilt-ridden text. My father sent nothing. Nathaniel posted a snarky social media update. It stung, but I didn't reply. Silence, I'd learned, was often the strongest response. Our apartment in Seattle wasn't a mansion, but it was ours. We were surrounded by cardboard boxes, laughing, happier than ever. 2 years later, Olivia arrived, a miniature Elena with a radiant smile and stubborn streak. Then Marcus, quiet, with eyes just like mine. Watching them play, I finally understood what life was about. It wasn't about gleaming shelves or revenue numbers. It was about these moments. Olivia's laughter, Marcus babbling, "Papa." Elena was the soul of our family. She worked part-time for a nonprofit, helping others access fresh food, always thinking of ways to make the world better. But the Whitmore shadow still loomed. My mother called, her voice laced with guilt. Nathaniel sent taunting articles about Whitmore retail success. I'd send my mother photos of Olivia and Marcus, but they rarely got a response. Once, she sent a $10,000 check for Olivia's birthday. I sent it back. "Thank you, Mom, but we don't need the money. We're happy." Life at Fresh Route was hard, but Elena always encouraged me. "You're doing something amazing, Alex," she'd say. "Every Fresh Route truck is a family eating fresh produce. Don't give up." And I didn't. We built a real-time tracking system, cutting delivery times in half. I wasn't making millions, but I was proud. I was building something with meaning. One Sunday, a perfect autumn afternoon. Elena, Olivia, Marcus, and I had a picnic in the park. Olivia, 5, chased butterflies. Marcus sat on my shoulders, giggling. Elena read, occasionally looking up with a gentle smile. Sometimes, she said, "I think we found paradise." I pulled her into my arms. "My paradise is you." She playfully punched my shoulder. So cheesy, Whitmore. It was a perfect moment, one I wanted to frame forever. I didn't know it was the last. We left the park as the sun set, its golden glow stretching across the lake. Olivia dozed in the back seat, clutching her butterfly kite. Marcus was half asleep, resting on his sister's shoulder. Elena hummed a lullaby, her fingers intertwined with mine. "Today was fun," she whispered. "We should do this more often." I smiled. More often. Maybe next week my words were cut off by a blinding light. A massive container truck, a monstrous beast, veered across the center line, heading straight for us. I heard Elena scream, "Alex, be careful." Then, everything plunged into darkness. I woke up in a stark white room, the antiseptic smell burning my nostrils. My head throbbed. My arm was numb. A strange, cold emptiness gripped my chest. A nurse saw I was awake. "You're very lucky," she said. Lucky? The word was a cruel joke. My wife? My kids? Where are they? I asked, my voice a broken whisper. The nurse's eyes darted away. "I'll get the doctor," she hurried out. A chill ran down my spine. I knew something was wrong. I knew. The doctor, a middle-aged man with eyes full of compassion, sat beside me. "Mr. Whitmore," he said, his voice low, "I'm so sorry. The accident, it was severe. Your wife and 2 children, they didn't make it. The world collapsed." I heard his words, but they weren't real. Elena, the girl with the brightest smile, couldn't be gone. Olivia, my little girl with the echoing laugh, vanished. Marcus, my tiny son who called me Papa, gone. "No," I whispered, shaking my head. "No, you're wrong. They're fine. They have to be." I tried to stand, the searing pain in my arm forgotten. "Take me to them." "Where are they?" "Elena, Olivia, Marcus." The nurse and doctor had to restrain me, injecting a sedative. I collapsed, silent tears streaming down my face. A vast, cold void swallowed everything I had ever loved. The days blurred into a nightmare. The truck driver had fallen asleep. He survived with a few scratches. My family didn't stand a chance. I felt nothing for him, no anger, no hatred. Just emptiness. Elena's parents, Robert and Margaret, flew in immediately. They sat by my bedside, holding my hand, their own grief raw. "Alex, you're our son," Margaret sobbed. "We lost Elena and the kids, but we won't lose you." Robert, looking a decade older, just sat there, his eyes filled with unspeakable pain. "What do you need, Alex?" "Anything." I couldn't answer. All I needed was to turn back time, to hold Elena again, to hear Olivia's laugh, Marcus's voice. But time grants no such wishes. My own family, the Whitmores. A different story. I called my mother, leaving a trembling voicemail. I hoped, foolishly, they would come. But no one did. My mother called back, her voice heavy with guilt. "Alex, I wanted to come, but your father, he wouldn't allow it. He said I shouldn't interfere with the life you chose." I gripped the phone, my chest tight. "Mom, my wife and your 2 grandchildren are dead," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "Do you understand? They're dead." She sobbed, but she didn't come. My father said nothing. I later learned he was hosting Nathaniel's birthday party at the Greenwich mansion, complete with expensive wine and high-profile guests. The funeral for Elena, Olivia, and Marcus was held in a small church in Portland. I stood before 3 coffins, 2 so tiny they shattered my soul. Olivia, still clutching her butterfly kite. Marcus, peaceful, like he was having a sweet dream. Elena, looking merely asleep, as if she still had something to say. I sent a funeral notice to the Whitmores, against Robert's advice. "They don't deserve it, Alex," he'd said. But I sent it anyway, hoping my father would see those 3 graves and realize his mistake. No one came. Not a condolence. Not a message. I stood before the graves, clutching my eulogy, my heart broken. Robert stood beside me, his hand on my shoulder. "You're my son," he said, his voice firm despite his red eyes. "You lost your wife, your children, but you haven't lost your family. We're here, Alex. We'll always be here." I nodded. Inside, I knew I'd lost everything. Elena was my light. Olivia and Marcus, my reason for waking up. Now, only a void remained. For 6 months, I lived like a ghost. Olivia's pink dress in the closet, Marcus's tiny shoes in the corner, Elena's notebook open on the kitchen table. I couldn't touch them, couldn't throw them away. Each night, I'd lie awake, desperate to recall their voices, their faces, but the harder I tried, the more they slipped away. Robert and Margaret visited often, bringing food, sharing stories of Elena. They tried to pull me from the abyss, but they were hurting too. One evening, alone in the dark apartment, the doorbell rang. It was my mother, her eyes red. "Alex," she trembled. "I'm sorry I couldn't come to the funeral. Your father, he..." "Don't talk about him," I cut her off, my voice cold. "Why are you here?" She stepped inside, wrapping her arms around me, trembling. "I wanted to see you. I wanted to know if you're okay." I wasn't. She knew it. But I let her stay. I realized she was a prisoner too, trapped in the Whitmore family's gilded cage. But her presence couldn't ease my pain. It only highlighted my own family's utter abandonment. 6 months after the accident, I made a decision. I couldn't live like a shadow anymore. I looked in the mirror, into my own hollow eyes. "You have to do something, Alex," I told myself, "for Elena, for Olivia, for Marcus." I wrote a final letter to my father, mother, and Nathaniel. Just a few lines: "I'm no longer part of the Whitmore family. Don't contact me again." I sent it, then turned off my phone. I sold all my shares in Whitmore Retail, a substantial sum. But money meant nothing. What I needed was a cold, decisive plan. For revenge. Then I called Robert Lancaster. "Dad," I said, calling him that for the first time. "I want to join Lancaster Market. I want to carry on what Elena dreamed of." Robert was silent for a moment. Then, his voice thick with emotion, he said, "Welcome home, son." I moved to Portland a week later. Robert and Margaret welcomed me like a son returning from war. Their modest wooden house, filled with the scent of freshly baked bread, felt like a sanctuary. "We'll get through this together, Alex," Margaret said, tears streaming down her face. "For Elena, for the kids." I nodded. But inside, I knew I hadn't come here just to heal. I came to fight. For Elena. For myself. The Whitmores had abandoned me. Now I would abandon them. Joining Lancaster Market sent shockwaves through the media. "Disowned son of Charles Whitmore joins direct competitor," the headlines blared. Some called me a traitor, others a maverick. I didn't care. I wasn't doing it for fame. I was doing it for Elena, for Olivia, for Marcus, to find meaning in a shattered life. Robert brought me into the leadership team as Director of Strategic Development. Lancaster Market's office was modest, no oil paintings or city skyline. But here, I felt a warmth, a sincerity, I'd never known. Employees called Robert Uncle Rob. They worked not just for money, but for a shared mission, good food for every American family. On my first day, the finance director, skeptical, asked, "You're Charles Whitmore's son. Why are you here?" I met his gaze. "I'm here because I believe in what Lancaster Market is doing, and because I want to carry on my wife's dream, bringing fresh, affordable food to everyone, not just the wealthy." The room fell silent. Then Robert smiled, placing a hand on my shoulder. "That's the answer I wanted to hear. Let's get to work, Alex." I threw myself into the job like a man running from his own shadow. Every morning, I reread Elena's notebook. I proposed a fresh in 24 hours distribution system, leveraging the logistics tech I'd learned at Fresh Route. It was ambitious: deliver fresh food from farms to stores within a day, at the lowest cost possible. If successful, it would position Lancaster Market to compete directly with Whitmore retail in cities my father considered impregnable fortresses. Robert backed me fully. "You can do this," he said. "Elena would be proud of you." Hearing her name twisted my heart, but I gripped my pen tighter. "I won't let you down, Dad," I said. For the first time, I felt I was working not just for Elena, but for myself, to prove I could stand tall without the Whitmore name. Our Eat Well Without Being Wealthy campaign, inspired by Elena's notes, launched a few months later. We weren't just selling food, we were telling a story about ordinary families. Our ads featured smiling farmers, children holding fresh apples, Lancaster Market, good food for everyone. It was a direct blow to Whitmore retail, to my father's philosophy of luxury for the elite. Articles began comparing us. Lancaster Market is redefining food retail while Whitmore retail is stuck in the past. I read them, feeling a mix of pride and vindication. I was doing this because Elena was right. Everyone deserves to eat well. One evening, Nathaniel called. "Hey, big brother," his voice cold and mocking. "Heard you're making waves at Lancaster Market. Congrats, traitor." I struggled to stay calm. "Nathaniel, if you're just calling to mock me, hang up." "Oh, no," he sneered. "I just wanted to remind you, you're digging your own grave. Dad won't let this slide. You think you can beat Whitmore retail? You're wrong." I hung up. But his words echoed. My father never forgave those who challenged him. And I, his eldest son, was now his greatest enemy. Lancaster Market was growing in leaps and bounds. Our stores in Chicago, Miami, Dallas, Whitmore strongholds, were now teeming with customers. Housewives, workers, even former Whitmore loyalists, flocked to us for fresh, affordable produce. Every night, before bed, I reread Elena's slanted handwriting, fresh in 24 hours. Every family deserves it. Those words were the fire that kept me going. I wasn't doing this just to defeat my father, though a part of me couldn't deny the satisfaction. I was doing it for Elena, for Olivia, for Marcus, to prove that values could win. One autumn morning, Robert called me into his office. "Alex," he said, sliding a folder across the table, "you've done what I never dared to dream. Lancaster Market is a name on everyone's lips. But do you know what that means?" I looked at him, waiting. Robert smiled, but with a hint of concern. "It means Charles Whitmore won't sit idly by. He's losing market share, shareholders, and his reputation. A man like Charles doesn't accept defeat." I nodded. I knew my father. He'd rather burn his empire to the ground than let it fall. "I'm ready," I said, my voice steady. "If he wants a fight, I'll give him one." Robert's gaze softened. "You remind me of Elena." She had that same look, the look of someone who never gives up. My heart tightened. Every mention of her name brought her image, her radiant smile, to mind. But I couldn't let emotions pull me under. I had a mission. Whitmore Retail began to crumble faster than I expected. Revenue declined. Their Chicago and Dallas stores closed, unable to compete with our prices and delivery speed. Customers realized they didn't need to spend hundreds on olive oil. They wanted fresh, affordable food, and we were delivering it. I drew on my fresh route experience, optimizing our supply chain. The fresh in 24-hour system wasn't a slogan, it was a revolution. Local farms partnered with us, trusting our transparent, efficient approach. But not everyone was pleased. Nathaniel, my brother, appeared in the media, trying to salvage Whitmore Retail's image. On CNBC, he declared, "Whitmore Retail is a symbol of sophistication and quality. Competitors like Lancaster Market may attract customers with low prices, but they'll never match our class." I turned off the TV. Numbers don't lie. Whitmore Retail was losing ground. I knew a counterattack was coming. It came quickly. Robert walked into my office one morning, a newspaper in hand. "You need to read this," he said, his voice tense. The Wall Street Journal blared, "Whitmore Retail accuses Lancaster Market of copyright infringement." My father, Charles Whitmore, was suing us for millions, claiming our "Eat Well Without Being Wealthy" campaign copied an old Whitmore ad. My blood boiled. He'd done this before, years ago, to Robert. This time, I wasn't a 16-year-old boy. I was Alex, Lancaster Market's Director of Strategic Development, and I wouldn't let him win. I convened our legal team. "They have no evidence," I said, firm. "Our campaign was built on Elena's ideas. This is a dirty tactic, but we won't back down." The lawyers warned it would be lengthy and costly. "Charles Whitmore doesn't need to win," one said. "He just needs to distract us and damage our reputation." I knew it. This wasn't just a lawsuit. It was a declaration of war. My father was sending a message, he still controlled the game. But he was wrong. I was no longer Alex Whitmore, the obedient son. I was Alex, fighting for my wife's dream, and I wouldn't let him destroy it. The lawsuit dragged on for months, but it didn't deter us. While the lawyers fought, I focused on expansion. We opened 10 new stores, each a dagger to my father's pride. I imagined him in his Manhattan office, his face red with rage, reading declining revenue reports. I accelerated the "Eat Well Without Being Wealthy" campaign, new ads featuring real families sharing how Lancaster Market had changed their lives. "I used to think fresh food was only for the rich," a single mother in Chicago said. Lancaster Market proved me wrong. Audiences loved it. Our revenue soared. Suppliers, once hesitant, now lined up. One major California farmers cooperative emailed me, "Your way of doing business is transparent and respects us." It was a major victory. I smiled, truly, for the first time in months. The climax came at a national food retail conference in Las Vegas. I was invited to speak. As I stepped onto the stage, my heart pounded. Not from nerves, but because I knew my father was there, somewhere in the audience. I didn't look at him, but I felt his gaze, cold, judgmental, just like the day he disowned me. I stood before hundreds of people, CEOs, journalists. "Lancaster Market isn't just about selling food," I said, my voice clear and strong. "We're about bringing hope. Every American family, rich or poor, deserves to eat well. We're not building a brand for the elite. We're building a brand for everyone." The crowd applauded. I wasn't speaking to them. I was speaking to Elena, to Olivia, to Marcus. I was speaking to myself. When I finished, a Forbes reporter asked, "Mr. Whitmore, do you think Lancaster Market's success is a declaration of war against Whitmore Retail, your father's company?" I smiled. Not a triumphant smile, but the smile of a man who had finally found his path. "I'm not declaring war on anyone," I said. "I'm just doing what my wife, Elena Lancaster, dreamed of, bringing good food to everyone. If that makes us a competitor to anyone, that's their problem, not mine." The crowd erupted. I stepped off stage, a weight lifted. Passing through the rows, I saw my father in the back, his face hard as stone. He didn't clap. He didn't look at me. But I knew he'd heard every word. Articles appeared, "Alexander Whitmore, the game changer in food retail." They called me the Whitmore Rebel. I didn't like the comparisons. My father wasn't Goliath, he was just a man trapped by his own pride. Whitmore Retail continued to weaken. Shareholders questioned Nathaniel's competence. A Bloomberg article revealed he'd spent millions on lavish, ineffective ad campaigns, while we won trust with authentic ones. Whitmore stores closed. Their stock plummeted. One evening, Robert walked into my office with a bottle of wine. "We need to celebrate," he said, radiant. "Today, we officially surpassed Whitmore retail in market share in 3 major states." I took the glass. "Thank you, Dad," I said, truly meaning it. "For believing in me." Robert raised his glass. "No, Alex. Thank you for keeping Elena's dream alive." A week later, an email arrived. From an unfamiliar address, no sender's name, just a single line: "Meet me at the Waldorf Astoria, New York, Friday, 7 p.m., meeting room 3, CW. I didn't need a full signature. My father was finally ready to face me. I stared at the email, torn. Part of me wanted to ignore him, let him drown. But another part, the Whitmore blood in me, couldn't turn away. I needed to look him in the eye, to confirm I was right to cut ties. I replied, "I'll be there." New York, in its winter chill, greeted me. The Waldorf Astoria, once our family's playground. The lobby, as opulent as I remembered. But I was no longer the boy trailing behind my father. I was Alex, a man who had chosen his own path. And I wasn't here to beg. I was here to confront him. Meeting room 3 overlooked Manhattan's skyline. He was already there, at the head of the table, in a perfectly tailored black suit. He looked older, grayer. But his gaze was still sharp. He didn't stand, didn't greet me, just gestured for me to sit. "Alex," he said, his voice low, deliberate. "You've done well. I didn't expect you to go this far with that cheap supermarket chain." I kept my expression neutral. "Lancaster Market isn't cheap," I said. "We bring good food to everyone. Something Whitmore retail has never done." He gave a dry, mocking laugh. "You still talk like a naive idealist, Alex. You think you're changing the world. You're just tearing down your family's legacy." I clenched my fists. "Legacy?" I asked, my voice low, sharp. "What's your legacy, Dad? An empire built on arrogance? A family you abandoned for your ego?" He leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "You dare talk to me about family? You're the one who betrayed us. You chose that Lancaster girl, that low-class supermarket chain, over Whitmore retail. Did you think I'd stand by and watch you destroy everything I've built?" I met his gaze, unflinching. "I didn't destroy anything. You did that yourself. You chose Nathaniel's birthday party over the funeral of my wife and children. You chose your reputation over your family. That was your choice. Not mine." The air grew heavy. He fell silent, but his hand trembled slightly on the table. For the first time, I saw a flicker of unease in his eyes. Not regret, but uncertainty. He stood, walked to the window, staring down at the city. "Whitmore retail is struggling," he said, his voice flat, like a financial report. "Shareholders are pulling out. Nathaniel, he's not strong enough to hold the company together. I need you, Alex. Come back. Help me save it. You're still my son." I almost laughed, but the sound caught in my throat. "Save the company?" I asked. "You think I'd come back after everything you've done? After you disowned me, after you didn't even show up to Elena's, Olivia's, or Marcus's funeral?" He turned back, his face hardening. "I was busy. I have responsibilities to the company, to the shareholders. You wouldn't understand." I stood, stepping closer. "Busy?" I asked, my voice trembling with anger. "Too busy to see your daughter-in-law and grandchildren one last time. Have you ever felt regret, Dad? Have you ever thought about how you chose Nathaniel's birthday party over standing by me when I lost everything?" He didn't answer. He looked at me, his eyes clouded, not with tears, but with the emptiness of a man who had lost everything, yet refused to admit it. I shook my head, feeling the last invisible thread between us snap. "I was your son," I said. "But you buried me along with them." I turned and walked out, not looking back. As the door closed, I felt a strange sense of liberation. I was no longer Alex Whitmore, the eldest son of an empire. I was Alex, fighting for Elena's dream, and no one, not even my father, would stop me. In the weeks that followed, Whitmore retail continued to collapse. News reports detailed asset sales to pay debts. Nathaniel tried to maintain an air of confidence on TV, but his eyes betrayed panic. Shareholders criticized him. Whitmore retail stores closed. Their stock plummeted. I felt no joy, no pity. Nathaniel had chosen his side, and now he faced the consequences. Lancaster Market, meanwhile, kept expanding. We opened new stores in cities where Whitmore retail had once dominated. The Eat Well Without Being Wealthy campaign became a phenomenon. Suppliers abandoned Whitmore retail for us. Farmers emailed, thanking us for giving them access to larger markets. One morning, Robert called me into his office. He slid a newspaper across his desk. The headline blared, "Whitmore Retail Files for Bankruptcy Protection." I read it, feeling a chapter of my life close. The company my father built, the one he'd wanted me to inherit, was now just a name in headlines. "What do you think, Alex?" Robert asked, his eyes searching mine. I folded the paper. "I don't think anything," I said. "Whitmore Retail is no longer part of me. Lancaster Market, that's my home." Robert nodded, a faint smile crossing his face. "You've done what I never dared to dream. But you know, Alex, what I'm most proud of isn't the revenue or market share. It's you. A man who rose from the ashes and kept fighting." I smiled, a lightness in my heart I hadn't felt in months. "Thank you, Dad," I said. "But this fight isn't over. We still have work to do." 2 years later, Lancaster Market was dominant. We held over 60% of the market share across the U.S. Our stores were everywhere, from Detroit to Los Angeles. The Eat Well Without Being Wealthy campaign wasn't just a slogan, it was a movement. But no matter how sweet our success, it couldn't fill the void in my heart. I still saw Elena in the morning coffee, Olivia's pink dress, Marcus's tiny shoes. I had achieved so much, but the cost was too great. One autumn afternoon, Robert called me into his office. He looked older, but with the same warm smile. "Alex," he said softly, "I've decided to retire." I was stunned. "Retire, Dad? Lancaster Market is at its peak." He raised a hand. "I've worked my whole life. I built Lancaster Market from a single store, and now it's bigger than I ever dreamed. But I'm tired. I want to spend time with Margaret, with our garden. To remember Elena in a way I haven't had time to do." I nodded, a pang of panic inside. Robert was the backbone, my anchor. "And I want you to take over," he said, looking me straight in the eye. "You'll be the CEO of Lancaster Market." I opened my mouth to protest, but he shook his head. "Don't say no, Alex. You're the right person. You understand Elena's dream, our values. You've proven that, not just to me, but to the world." I sat in silence, a wave of emotion swelling. CEO of Lancaster Market. Elena had once teased me about it. "One day you'll run the whole retail world, Alex," she'd laughed. "But don't let it make you arrogant, okay?" "I don't know if I'm worthy," I said, my voice hoarse. "I've done everything for Elena, but I still feel like I haven't done enough." Robert stood, walked around the desk, and put a hand on my shoulder. "You've done more than enough, Alex. You've made her dream a reality. Now, do this for yourself. Live a life you're proud of." I nodded, holding back tears. "I'll try, Dad," I said. "I promise." The day I officially became CEO, we held a small press conference. Cameras flashed. "I'm not here to build an empire," I said, my voice clear. "I'm here to carry on a legacy. Elena Lancaster's legacy, who believed everyone deserves to eat well and live well. Lancaster Market won't stop because we're not just selling food. We're bringing hope." The crowd applauded. I looked down, seeing Robert and Margaret smiling. And for a fleeting second, I almost saw Elena standing beside them, her brown eyes shining brightly. I blinked, and she was gone. But I knew she was always there. In every decision. Every step. That autumn, I returned to the cemetery in Portland. The oak trees blazed red under the setting sun. I walked along the path, carrying daisies, Elena's favorite. A gentle breeze carried the scent of freshly baked bread from a nearby Lancaster Market, one I'd personally inaugurated. I knelt before the 3 graves, placing daisies on each. "I did it, Elena," I whispered, my voice soft enough for only the wind to hear. "Lancaster Market is for everyone now, just like you always wanted." I kept my promise. I touched Olivia's headstone, then Marcus's, my heart constricting. "I wish you and the kids were here to see it." I sat there, letting the memories flood back. Olivia's laughter, Marcus gripping my finger, Elena's smile. They were painful, but they were also my strength. They reminded me I had lived, had loved. And no matter the loss, I still had a reason to keep going. A soft breeze swept through, carrying the scent of bread, and a peace I hadn't felt in years. I stood, looking out at the sunset, painting the sky brilliant orange. "Thank you, Elena," I whispered, "for giving me a reason to live." In the years that followed, Lancaster Market continued to grow. But I was no longer just a man driven by a fight. I learned to slow down, as Robert advised. I spent time with him and Margaret, tending their garden. I started a charitable foundation in Elena's name, providing free food to children in underserved neighborhoods. Every time I saw a child holding a fresh apple and smiling, I saw Olivia. I saw Marcus. And I knew I was doing the right thing. As for the Whitmores, I cut off all contact. My father moved to a small house in the suburbs after the bankruptcy. Nathaniel tried a new company, but it failed. My mother sent letters, but I didn't respond. Not because I couldn't forgive, but because I had found a new family. The Lancasters. The people who believed in me. And the family of dreams I was now living. My story ends here, but my life doesn't. Each day, I wake up carrying Elena, Olivia, and Marcus in my heart. I walk into the office, watching Lancaster Market's employees work with passion, and I know I've found my purpose. I'm no longer Alex Whitmore, the eldest son of an empire. I'm Alex. A man who lost everything, but found himself again. Who turned pain into hope. And who will keep living, for those I love, and for myself.